Announced in March, just before the stringent stay-at-home measures limited the circumstances in which any of us were able to leave our home, the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme has been seen as the flagship government measure to limit the economic fallout from the coronavirus crisis. Since March, the scheme has allowed employers to furlough employees, keeping them on the payroll while requiring that they carry out no work for the employer. Employers were initially able to claim a grant worth up to 80% of their usual wages, capped at £2,500 a month, plus employers' national insurance contributions and auto-enrolment pension contributions. However, July, August, September and October all see changes to the scheme before it closes at the end of October. In May, the Chancellor announced several important changes to the way the scheme operates, which will affect which employees can be furloughed and the work they can undertake while furloughed. Firstly, the scheme in effect closed to new entrants from the 10th of June. Employers are now unable to furlough employees who had previously been furloughed for a full 3 weeks. At the same time, they cannot furlough more employees in a claim period than the maximum number of employees claimed for under the scheme in the original fall. Secondly, since the 1st of July, employers have been able to bring back employees furloughed on a part-time basis under a scheme of flexible furlough. Employees can be brought back for any amount of time on any shift pattern, with employers still able to claim for hours not worked that a furloughed employee otherwise would work. Furthermore, the minimum claim period is now 1 week. Employers will have to furlough employees in full for any hours they work and meet the cost of the employer's national insurance and pension contributions this pay attracts. Thirdly, from the 1st of August, the value of CJRS grants will begin to taper down. From August onwards, the grants will no longer cover the cost of employers' NICs and pension contributions, with these costs passing to employers. However, the grants will still cover 80% of the employee's usual wages up to a cap of £2,500 a month. From September, CJRS grants will only cover 70% of the usual wages of furloughed employees, but those employees will remain entitled to receive 80% of their usual wages, capped at £2,500. This means that employers will need to make up the difference by contributing 10% of an employee's usual salary. October's CJRS grants will fall to 60% of a furloughed employee's usual wages, but as with September, those employees will remain entitled to 80% of their usual wages, up to a cap of £2,500 a month. This means employers will need to contribute 20% of a furloughed employee's usual salary. As expected, the scheme will close at the end of October and it will not be possible to claim a grant in respect of a furloughed employee. This will lead to a cliff edge in support, with employers suddenly needing to cover 100% of wages in November, having been liable for just 20% in October, a 5-fold increase. At this point, employers will have to decide whether they need to bring furloughed employees back to work as previously, renegotiate their contract, or make them redundant. If you currently have employees on furlough, you do not need to change anything until August, when you will need to begin meeting the cost of employers' national insurance and pension contributions. However, it will be open to you to bring those employees back on a part-time basis from July, while still claiming a grant in respect of any of their usual hours that they do not work. This arrangement will then remain in place until the close of the scheme at the end of October, but you should bear in mind that the value of the grant will gradually reduce from August onwards. There are 2 key steps involved in bringing back an employee on flexible furlough from the 1st of July onwards. Firstly, you will need to agree a new flexible furlough agreement in writing with the employees concerned, setting out the new working arrangements. Secondly, you will need to report as part of your claim the number of hours worked by the furloughed employee and the number of hours they would usually work. In its initial guidance, HMRC said that to work out how much support a business is entitled to through its furloughed grant claim calculator, Employers must enter usual working hours and actual working hours for the claim period. The difference between these is the furloughed hours on which the grant claim is based. However, initial confusion over how to calculate usual working hours for partial furloughed employees left many employers stumped. HMRC has now offered further guidance based around the example of a person who works 35 hours a week and is paid on the last working day of each month. It has said that employers need to calculate the usual hours for each pay period or part of a pay period that falls within the claim period. To calculate usual working hours, employers should follow this example. Step 1. Start with the hours your employee was contracted for at the end of the last pay period, ending on or before the 19th of March 2020, 35 hours. Step 2. Divide by the number of calendar days in the repeating working pattern, including non-working days. 35 divided by 7 equals 5. Step 3. Multiply the number of calendar days in the pay period or partial pay period you are claiming for. For July, this is 31. 5 times 31 equals 155. If the answer isn't a whole number, then an employer should round up to the nearest next number. Employees should then subtract the actual number of hours worked to calculate the number of hours to apply the furlough calculation to. HMRC has published several examples on its website to show some of the different permutations of flexible furlough calculations. The job retention bonus was announced by the Chancellor at the Economic Update on the 8th of July 2020. The scheme will see the government provide a grant to employers of £1,000 in respect of each previously furloughed employee retained in accordance with the terms of the scheme until the end of January. Employees must be paid at least £520 a month on average in November, December and January for the payment to be made in February. Further guidance on the scheme is expected by the end of July.